Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel, and today we have with us another special guest, and he goes by the name of Joe Testa. Now, if you've been in medical device sales for any period of time, and you've spent any amount of time on the LinkedIn platform, then Joe Testa is not an unfamiliar name. He's an influencer on the LinkedIn platform, and he makes great content. But today, he's going to share what it really means to be in orthopedic sales. We get deep into what the industry was like when he first entered to what it is today. We talk about biologics. We talk about what it means to be this kind of rep, how you got to show up, how demanding it is, and what kind of life you lead when you're leading the life of an orthopedic medical device sales rep. But I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to save it for the interview. So as always, we do our best to bring you guests that are trailblazing, pioneering, doing things differently in the medical sales space. And I'm so happy to bring this episode to you. So I really do hope you enjoy this interview. Hey, Joe, how are we doing today?
Doing great. How are you, Samuel?
No complaints. No complaints. So, Joe, why don't you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
I'm Joe Testa. I sell orthopedic implants. I work for a company named Exactech Orthopedics, which is out of Gainesville, Florida. We're, a small orthopedic recon company that competes, against some of the giants. And I run a team of 3 people, and I work in West Palm Beach, Florida.
All right, living the good life, right? I'm a Californian. You're a Floridian. We don't know seasons that well, right?
I spent 3 years in San Francisco in sales, right out of the gate. And that was in medical device too, but it was in it was in anesthesia and respiratory. But I know that area, not the SoCal, but I know North Cal really well. But
absolutely.
I haven't been there in a while.
Absolutely. So I love the fact that you're on the show today because I think you can clear the air. So many people want to get into this industry, and a lot of people want to get into medical device sales. And when I talk to some professionals, the ones that want to get into medical device, they say, I want ortho, I want sports medicine, I want spine. And, they're all a little bit different. So why don't you tell the audience specifically, what is ortho sales and what do you actually sell?
So, the industry's changed in orthopedics quite a bit where, as more and more is happening and as companies acquire more and more, businesses, what's happening is they're breaking off divisions. And so I started off years ago at Stryker, and it was called a full line rep. So I carried recon, trauma, and biologics, and pretty much the full bag for anything outside of spine and face. Currently today, the way it's developed, the logical path for you to become a full line rep now is few and far between, because most guys are either trauma reps or they're recon reps or they're Mako reps or they're on-site specialists or they're biologic reps, right? So having that full bag opportunity has become, it's just like a unicorn, right? So there's not a lot of guys doing that anymore when you're working for, one of the big 3. But, what I did is I started out doing that. And, what that is seeing a lot of hips, knees, and shoulders every day. And those are our elective cases. And then, we'll do trauma after 5 or whatever, till whatever time the trauma cases go. There's an add-on list. And your schedule is very much like an orthopedic surgeon. So if you're doing full line, what you would do is you get up, and if you read my, whatever I write, typically it's like you get up early in the morning and then you get home when, your orthopedic surgeon gets home, it could be at any time.
Okay. So let's break that up a little bit. So, you said a couple things that I want to address. Biologics. For the audience, what is biologics?
Biologics is something that it would be like a bone void filler. So, for me, I don't want to get into the details as far as like all the different product lines, but it's something, if there was a space, we were in a revision or in a trauma setting where the bone after you've put it together or after you're trying to reconstruct it is still missing. We can't reproduce bone. So like, orthopedics isn't a life-threatening service. So typically when we're under surgery, you're not worrying about the patient's life, but what we are worrying about is trying to reproduce what the bone looked like prior to it being fractured or to it having arthritis. So typically, we're able to put that bone back together. But with biologics, the way I carry it, it has a lot of different. If you want to go soft tissue world, you could go into a lot of different what biologics is. But the way in which I carried it was typically through like bone void fillers, and we'd fill like an acetabulum, or you'd fill like a little gap in a trauma fracture.
Got it. So you said the industry's changed a bit, and it used to be, everybody was carrying everything. Now it's become so nuanced and specialized, and reps are, particular to one space within medical device sales. For example, like you just said, biologics or recon or ortho with hips, knees, and joints. How has it changed for you though? Would you say that nowadays it's much easier to work in this space selling a smaller product line, or has is it not what you think and it's actually harder? I mean, talk to us a little bit about what that shift has been for you and how you sell and how you enjoy the job.
For me, right, like you had Jacob McLaughlin on not too long ago, right? And I listened to that podcast, and it reminded me a lot of what my life used to be like, at 26 and 25 when I started. And so, when they ask me like what this industry looks like today, like for me, that's a much different answer than maybe he would give, right? Where he's excited and he's at the beginning of something very creative, and he's running at a different pace, right, than someone that I would. So I've done that, right? And so I speak towards that, and I still do that. But for me, very much, it's going like, wow, that was cool and exciting. But then work that 100-hour week with kids, work that 100-hour week, with baseball practice or a soccer game or what have you, or a recital at school, and so then your game scaling that becomes a little tougher, right? So now I've learned, time is my greatest asset. And so I'm trying to create more time, both to sell and also to, create for myself and for my family. So growing in orthopedics is very hard because, like I said, you have the schedule of an orthopedic surgeon those are some of the busiest guys on the planet. And so for me, it's been able to try and teach a team and scale a team to try and reproduce something that, we figured out what our method was. I have several partners that are on my team, and, what we do every day is try to get out and get after it, because at the end of the day, trying to scale it, long term it's something that's one day at a time. It's one step at a time. It's not something that you're just going to wake up and go, I have the answer for it. And in orthopedics, it's like a quarter-mile run, because every day you got to start over. You got 7 cases in one day, and our goal is to really just prepare the doctor to hit the shot. So I like to refer things back to sports. I'm a baseball player myself. I play a little bit of golf. I'm terrible, but an analogy that someone once told me, and I think it makes sense, is we're a lot like a caddy in a professional caddy, where we have the greatest spot. We're the greatest fans in the world for these orthopedic surgeons. We have a front row seat every single day, every single case. And so what I try to talk about, what I try to do and teach my team is, look, what you're trying to do is prepare the theater for the doctor. So when they get inside, this operating room, everything's set, everything's perfect. The music right, the room's right, all the instruments are right. So then you step out of the way, and it's the perfect reason for the doctor to hit the shot, right? Because we don't scrub in. We're not able to, help other than, what our limitations are, which is being professional on our instruments and implants, right? But what we do try to do is, allow every factor to set the surgeon, to set the scene, and go and look. You can go in, you're prepared to help these patients. And, for me, it's exciting because I look back at my life and I'm like, hey, what am I doing? Let's just fast forward. Once you hit play in orthopedics, after a decade, it's amazing. I've been able to say that, I've been blessed to see 10,000 people get helped by surgeons, and not a lot of people, and what's crazy is, guys, I'm not special, right? Like there's a lot of guys like me. I'm just the loudest right now. So, unfortunately some of my opportunities, are growing because I'm a voice, right? That didn't really come from anything other than one day I decided to type one thing on the internet, and then the next day I typed it, and the next day, and I think about that, and it's humbling, right? Because you don't feel like, at Stryker, it was like, you are your number, right? So every year you try to hit, everyone looks at it, oh, he's hit quota, whatever, however many times, but you are your number and you want to abide by that. But there's real people on the table every day. And so in orthopedics, you look at it like, oh, I want to sell. It's so crazy. But it's like, you could look at it a couple different ways. You could say, I sold this many dollars, right? As a sales rep, like that's what companies want. But like as a guy that's running a team, like how I'm teaching my young guys and what I've learned from guys, before me is, you're trying to set the stage because we're helping patients, right? And so, when I get up every day, it's easy because my mindset is, what if that was my mom, dad, sister, or brother on the table? Would the instruments be there? Would the implants be there? Will I be missing something? The answer is no. So then if it's not going to be missing that time, then it can't be missing those other 10,000 times, right? Yeah. And so that weight as an orthopedic rep, like I feel for those people, and that's why that's why typing to the world, like it's like people are responding, I think, because they're like, at first I was kind of like a joke, and now I realize, holy smokes, I just spoke to 110,000 people this week, right? Yeah. And you're watching like the Tennessee Alabama game, and then I look up like, how many people fit in that stadium, right? And you're like, it's 102,000. What?
Yeah, people are watching.
What? So it's crazy. And, analytically, it's something special. And, I've talked about that. I think that's going to open doors for people in areas that don't exist or currently today. Like it's changing day by day. I mean, you creatively, the sky's the limit, right?
You're 100%.
So, I know I'm talking a lot and you want to cut me off, but the reality is,
no, I don't want to cut you off.
I'm super passionate about it. And, ultimately the rep is like the orthopedic rep, the way I describe it is like, they're unknown, right? So like they're the guy, they're the caddy, right? So, you might remember who won the 2002 Masters, right? But who was the caddy? They weren't there. They were there and they had the best seat in the world, right? And they're still helping out, but they're not there to hit the shot. We're there to get everybody prepared and everything necessary so the surgeon's in their best mindset in order to do perfect surgery to help that patient.
Man, I love it. I'm stealing that analogy. I'm just going to tell you now, Joe, that's some good stuff right there. And you say that you guys are the unknown. However, I think that's changing a little bit, especially with what's going on with social media. And, you spoke to it. You have a voice and you're being watched, and not just people that want to get in, but surgeons are watching you and hospital administration's watching you. Everyone is paying attention. So I think the unknown rep is becoming more of a brand that is, it's a positive thing because it's setting an example of how people that do want to get in and become reps themselves, how they should operate. And that's kind of you're setting out that example from the mindset with your posts and whatever you talk about to whatever you're on, like this podcast, to what people actually find that you do. It's setting a tone and it's setting an example.
I appreciate that, man. And, like I said, a couple people right now that are doing something that it hasn't really been done before. So
right.
I don't know if it's setting an example, but it's definitely carving a path that hasn't been carved before. And so, yeah, there is some unknown hospitals and surgeons and whatever. But at the end of the day, we stand on, I tell my team we're the greatest team in the world, right? So whether we are or not is irrelevant. But if we get up every day and we believe that, right, we're more likely to be perfect throughout what we do, right? So the mindset is, if I hire you, you're joining the greatest team in the world. If you don't believe that, you can't join our team, right? So I think you have to believe that. People laugh at me when they're, my competitors are like, well, what do you mean? And then like after like 12 years of continuing to say it, they just look at you and they smile now. So it doesn't matter. I've learned even through LinkedIn very recently that, people treat me different when they see me in the hospital because they do see me, the donut guy or the guy that did whatever my most week. And I can't really treat the competitors, right? I'm not giving out all the secrets for free right on the internet. And then I look at my competitors and be like, I'm against you. So what I've learned is like, I don't compete in the same way that I did when I was 26. The doctors don't see me in the same way. the hospital doesn't see me in the same way, right? When I was there 10, 12 years ago, I was a different person. That time and experience earns you the right to just, have a seat at the table to say, look, we do it the right way. We try to help patients. I understand the hospital doesn't feel at times that reps are important. So maybe to an extent we aren't, but that doesn't change the fact of how we're gonna respond to how we need to do our job. Because if we don't have the mindset of excellence, then we will fail, and that patient will get they're going to suffer.
I love it. I mean, that's the only way to look at it. Let's dive a little bit into the schedule. You kept mentioning that you got to operate like an orthopedic surgeon. Give us an idea of what that schedule looks like. What time are you waking up? Give us, on a typical day, what's happening, and give us from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, how does it look?
So, the unique thing is every day is different. So we have our elective cases. So typically, let's say we work with 8 different surgeons, on a given week electively. That doesn't mean that every week they're going to have cases, because in joints, there's guys that, operate every week, and sometimes they're week to week or every other week. And then you have your guys that will be every Monday, every Tuesday, 7, 8, 10 cases. So for our team, that looks different week to week. This week, we were super busy. Monday through Thursday, it's a little heavier for us, right? So on those days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're running, I have, like I said, a team of 3 guys. We're running the 3 different hospitals. We're all covering different cases that start at 7:30. So for me, I'd get up at 5:15. I get to the hospital no later than 6:30. And then that gives you an hour to prepare for the case. And that doesn't change, right? So no matter who you are, what company you work for, I think you should be there an hour before any case, whether it's at 7:30 in the morning or, whether it's at, 2 a.m. That way, if there's an issue, we can stop the patient from going under anesthesia, because that, ultimately we can't do surgery without what we need for instruments and implants. We are dead. We are of no use to an orthopedic surgeon if our instruments aren't all sterile and our implants aren't all there. And so rule 1 is you should know that probably within 15 minutes. So, or the night before, you always want to know before a patient goes into under anesthesia that, hey, I have my stuff, right? When you've seen 10,000 plus and been 10,000 plus surgeries, you've seen it all, right? You've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. And so you try to not learn through experience on those bad situations, and you try to learn through coaching, in my experience, and others, or what you've seen from another rep through over the years, and go, hey, look, don't do that, because this mistake I've seen. And, so we try to be robotic. The best orthopedic surgeons that I've worked with are robots. They operate much like that. They get up at the same time. They do the same thing. They eat the same thing. They're superstitious. They want to reproduce. It's very robotic doing a total joint, right? So doing a knee or hip, it's all just step for step for step for step for step. And we're just trying to do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible for the patient being under anesthesia. Not in a hurry, but because in the OR, in any situation, you want to be efficient, right? And we're doing the same steps every time, and a doctor wants you and expects you to know that flow, then, our job is to not at all get in the way of that doctor's flow, so he or she can just do what they need to do.
Got it. Okay. So what time is the day ending?
This week, it ends typically around 6 or 7. I mean, last night I went to dinner with one of my surgeons. The night before that, I went to dinner with one of my surgeons. And so, when you say the day end, is it the surgery day or is it the day, right? So orthopedics is a lifestyle, right? So when you get off, it doesn't mean you're off. I mean, it means that you're preparing for the next day, which means you have to get all the instruments clean. So for me, I don't do a lot of the daily move the instruments, move the implant. So for me, the day yesterday ended at 9:00 p.m. So I got to the hospital at 6:30. I did surgery at 7:30. We went through a lunch and a training. And then, Friday for me is to prepare for the following week. So we have to check all the x-rays, check all the, make sure all our instruments for trauma are on the shelves, because, we have trauma call, which is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The hospitals, some of them run a team during the weekend. Some of them don't. So if your trays aren't sterile, guess what? You don't get to participate in surgery that weekend, right?
Right.
So the doctors tell you in advance, listen, I'm on call. Have your stuff on the shelf. If you get a phone call, you need to be there, right? So it's not, you learn in the beginning, it's like you're on pins and needles, but ultimately it's something that it doesn't end. I mean, I have a hard time telling you, it's not that it doesn't end, but when you do trauma, like right now, I could get a phone call. I don't really do a lot of level 1 stuff, but yesterday ended at 10, the day before was 10. And, you continue to just take it day by day by day by day. I can't look in the past. It sounds crazy, but like I said before, it's a quarter-mile run. So I'm looking at one day at a time, day at a time. I have a team of people, right? So that's my role. I have a guy named Joe Testa, who logistically is looking days out, right? So he's the guy that's making sure all the instruments are ready, all the implants are ready, right? Kanan's running around helping with that, running with me, doing more surgeries, Josh is doing surgeries. So it's a cycle. So for me, having a team of 3, my role is sales. Josh's role is logistics. Kanan's role is to fill in anything outside of that we need. So a lot of times that's sales. A lot of times that's doing surgery. Sometimes that's going in and templating. Sometimes that's being the expert on, our GPS software. Sometimes that's helping out another team that needs help, right? Like he's got to go down Monday to Miami and do, 6 surgeries because the guy's on vacation. So, it's next up and it's always like, how can I help out? Today we did 2 hip fractures, right? So, today was Saturday, and we all worked. We all saw surgeons. We did it in different capacities, right? And so it's a lifestyle. If you're not, and it's every rep. It's not just us, right? My competition is doing the same thing.
Yeah. No, I get it. Okay. So talk to us a little bit about then what type of person, because I mean, you've really laid it out for us. You've given us a schedule. You've made it very clear that you're operating like an orthopedic surgeon, and really, it doesn't really end. It's like your career has kind of been like one long day, and you're trying to be more efficient, more consistent, and help your surgeons have better outcomes. So talk to us about the kind of person that, you've been in it for a while now. So you have a team. So you've seen people, and I'm sure you've cued in on, okay, based on what they're showing me, I bet they're going to show up this way. What kind of person is a good fit for orthopedics in medical device?
Like as a rep?
Yeah, as a rep.
So like who would I be looking for? Or like when you're saying like quality line?
Yeah, I mean, let me lay it out this way. So right now our listeners are people that want to get into the industry, people that are in the industry, and people that are leading the way. For those that are thinking about making a transition, right? There's a lot of other reps out there that are thinking about becoming orthopedic reps. There's a lot of professionals out there that are thinking about becoming orthopedic reps. What type of person do they need to be, or how should they assess themselves to say, you know what, this is probably something that I can really do and do well?
I think you have to be one of the most competitive people on the planet to be in orthopedics long term. For people that want to do it for a decade, I think that if you aren't, then, it becomes very hard to win. It's very competitive. It has really, really high-end technology, and, companies, make you succeed. Right. So, it's kind of a joke, and I don't really know it to be true, but the rumor was like when I started Stryker, like if you miss twice in a row, you're out. Right. Sometimes it is that. I'm not saying it's that in every situation, but you get one shot. And if you come into a territory in West Palm Beach and think you're going to beat me or my team, then you better outwork us. I mean, that's a serious thing.
That's the reality.
It's not a threat. It's just, we compete against some of the best guys in the world. I do. Or else, else I would have all the business, and I have very little business. Right. So it's hard because what do? I don't sleep. I think a lot about orthopedics. I think a lot about my team and patients and doctors and what we could do better and how we can be the best, right? I talk about this on the internet, and it's true in my life. So my life is filled around how do I get one step better? And you have to continue that mindset. And that sounds very cheesy, but that's the honest truth. And so if you're not a person that's looking and going, I want to be one step better than Joe Testa today, then you eventually, right? If I'm continuing to become one step better every day, how many steps behind me are you?
Yeah.
Right. So if you're not that person and you don't want to be that person for at least 5 years in a row, right? To talk to, get up at 5:15 and get home at 10, get up at 5:15 and get home at 10, get up at 5:15 and get home at 10, and Saturdays and Sundays aren't weekends. If you signed up for that, then that's orthopedics. Some people love that. Some people love that. And so, a lot of times those are athletes, right? So they seek out a lot of times athletes, but ultimately you can't just be like a go-getter, right? Because organization then comes in, right? Because if you don't have your instruments and implants there, then you're nothing, right? So you can be as hungry as ever, but if you one time or two, like if you 3 times in a row think that you're going to miss an instrument with a doctor, you're done. You lose their business forever. So you need a person that is highly accountable, and typically someone that's really good with working with teams and can drop their ego. So, I'm not above putting a tray together. I'm not above moving an implant. I'm not above, doing anything my team needs to be successful, right? And if we don't all think that way, that's what makes it kind of hard when you start to develop these pods and people have trouble scaling, right? For me, those people, those driven, happy people that continue to get up every day and realize I'm not in this for me to win, but I'm in this for the people around me to win and be happy. And if I can bring joy and energy to my environment and have a doctor in a state of mind and a team of state of mind that we have a healthy atmosphere, then those people win, long term. But you got to be a self-starter, man. And people that you've had on the podcast, I've listened to almost all of your stuff. Those are the same things that they've said, right? I'm not saying anything new, right? I don't do anything, like, just to be clear, like I am not better than anyone, right? All I have is I have a set of principles that I abide by, and we try to like reproduce those every day. And my team, they have their own values, and we sell ourselves, right? So at the end of the day, we're selling ourselves, which wins us business. And then we're creating reproducibility through whatever our doctors need.
You said that a lot of people say the same thing, but I think it's really nice that you stress the importance of that 1% improvement, right? Just doing something every single day. I think people lose sight of how that consistency and needing to be that person that needs to be better every single day for the long term, how critical that is to becoming a good rep. I think that needs to be stated. And I'm glad you put that out there, Joe.
It's important, man. I mean, it's not all, a lot of it is just a mindset, right? So if you don't think that way, right, you're not trying to grow. You get stuck in this like just complacency bubble. And, that's why you and I, we spoke before. I think for me, the biggest thing that I've had, and it was just pure luck, right? So a lot of what happened to me is I got put in a situation where I had mentors that taught me. And if it weren't for those people, then I would not know. I wouldn't be here on talking to you on a podcast. That's for sure, because I knew nothing when I started. There are guys that took me under their wing.
I think that's such an important point to bring up, Joe. You talk about, and I don't think that's talked about enough, actually, how the people that mentored you, ultimately contribute so heavily to the person you ultimately become. Talk to us a little bit about what that looks like, what that looked like for you, and how you continue to foster that for people that work under you.
Coming right out of college, I was trained, right? So I started in inside sales, and it was a process where I came out, wanted to go into medical device. And I did all these interviews. The only job I could get was in Chicago, right? Inside sales. And I'm like, done. And so I fly out there, and I'm a 24-year-old kid that got lucky enough to have a guy named Rob Baina take him under his wing.
Got it.
And he was a director at the time, but he was passionate about sales, and he was like passionate about baseball. I mean, I think he's passionate about hiring like his first like baseball sales guy that he could just take under his wing. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he's one of the greatest salesmen I've ever met. And it's just like my path has been pure dumb luck of almost falling on really good mentors, right? And so he took me initially under his wing. And then when I started at Stryker, I had a guy named Patrick Huffins take me under his wing, who had at the time already 15 years sales experience, right? And my partner, Josh Hess, took me under his wing and taught me everything he knew about orthopedics. And Pat and I sold together, and we were able to collaborate and, built a huge territory that was very successful for many years. That team culture gave us an opportunity to be in front of a lot of young orthopedic surgeons. And so the value that I think I bring to an OR room at times, the composure and the things at the time that we've seen, is through the knowledge that I've learned through those surgeons just by taking me under their wing. And so I was like pure dumb luck. I landed in a territory and had zero business to start, but there were a lot of really young surgeons that had zero business too. And I just became friends with them. And, funny enough, I organically grew with them. And so those guys that had no business, fast forward 5 years, now are doing sometimes, 700 joints a year. You start to see things really quickly. And then those people who were trained in Boston and New York and Philadelphia and some of the greatest, institutions on the planet, orthopedics is fairly young. So I don't know how many sales reps you've had on in the orthopedic space, but it's not been around forever, right? So some of the godfathers of orthopedics are still actually practicing, or they're still alive. And most of those surgeons that started, right, the Ranawats and the things like that, they've taught some of the doctors who I've learned under. So if you've spent a lot of time in orthopedics, you've developed a lot of relationships probably with surgeons, and those surgeons have trained over some of the best places in the world. And so passing down that knowledge just indirectly, it's not like they sat down and we took a class from them, but when you discuss surgeries and what the game plan is and preoperatively and intraoperatively, you're there, and you watch them, you learn a lot of tips, tricks that, are valuable if another surgeon at times, see something where they're like, hey, I've never seen this before. What do you think about this fracture? How would you fix it? Have you seen another guy do something like that? And it's not that, it's a game plan where a surgeon goes, how do I use your instruments and implants to my max capacity? Because this patient, right? When you have that answer at times, it's really rewarding.
Yeah, I can imagine. So we're talking about mentors, and you're talking about how valuable they were to you. One thing that we've seen quite a bit is these new companies start up. They hire a bunch of sales reps, and I'm going to speak specifically to medical device and OR based roles like ortho, and they're pretty green, and they're sent out into the field, and a lot of them are kind of sent out to figure it out. And they come back to us and they say, hey, we need some help. Could you have any sales trade or something to give us? Because we need some help. Hence the reason we created a program to help with that. But I want to ask you about that. For those reps listening right now that might be in that situation, might be looking for that help, and maybe they're wanting a mentor out of one of their surgeons or out of a rep that they've seen, what are some of the things you would say they should be looking for that mentorship? What should that person that they're looking for be demonstrating that makes them say, you know what, I need to get their ear and talk to them about potentially being a mentee? First, give us, what should they be screening for? What type of person should they be screening for to be mentored by? And then, tell us how they should go about doing it to create that relationship.
I think it's tenure, right? So if you get an industry, I think LinkedIn's a really good opportunity for you to do some homework, right? Because not everyone perspective is everything, right? So, not everyone that's talking on LinkedIn is qualified to be like someone's mentor, in my opinion, right? There's a lot of people out there that are preaching and it's fun, right? Exciting. And like we said, a lot of people watch it. And not that I should mentor anyone either, but what I would look for is like a lot of people who aren't talking on LinkedIn. And I would look for tenure. I'd look for someone that has 20, 30 years experience, 15 years experience, 17 years experience at a very high-end company and hasn't changed career, jobs a lot, where they've been with one of the big three, maybe for a really long time in a rep or manager position, right? And just reaching out and saying, hey, I get a lot of people that reach out to me and I respond to as many as I can, right? Not to everyone, but I've been trying to really provide value to people, asking nothing in return. But I would advise them to go, hey, like if I wanted to go to a company right now, I would use LinkedIn to my advantage. And then there's resources and tools like Evolve Your Success that, they make a lot of sense, right? So, I spend a lot of time on the space and on LinkedIn and I see a lot of candidates and I've now researched, how they're taking the logical path. And I followed some of those people and we've had, we've collaborated and have conversations after they get jobs. And I think some of the hardest things are like, it's not just finding that person to help you, and maybe they do or don't help you. Because what are you going to ask them in one setting? You need someone to really mentor you. Like you need someone to spend years with you and time. And it's not just a simple class, right? It's going, hey, maybe I took the Evolve Your Success class, but I want someone like Joe Testa or someone else to continue to work with me through my trials and tribulations, because maybe that company they're working with doesn't have the training program to make them successful. People just assume that. So what's funny is like, I didn't have any like real training, right? So I get hired. My training is, it's on the job. It's in surgery, right? So we're high volume down in South Florida. So the training program was, you're going to go with top reps who see we're going to put you through a fire hose. And if you make it out, we'll talk about hiring, right? That was how it worked, right? So, the agent who was running South Florida at the time was one of the best agents in the world. And he was legendary to run, ruthless sales teams that were able to maximize the potential. And how he did it was, he didn't send you to like the training course. They invest you $0 unless you figured it out on your own.
Then they took you on. They said, you're worth putting our resources into.
$0, right? Because a company, these big three, right? Stryker, DePuy, Zimmer, even Exact Tech, they get a lot of people that want, right? You train a lot of people every year, and, programs like MSC train a lot of people every year. And so you're starting to see this pool of people that want a job, and some of them are getting them and some of them aren't. But the question is, those people who aren't, what are they doing now to try and beat out that person that's next to them? Or those people who are like, great, you got the job, but remember we talked about like, if you don't hit your number twice, you're out. Like, I think that's going to become like a really real thing here in the near future, right? We're in this hiring spree, but that could change as robotics and the industry changes, right? They're going to need less people, right, to do the same thing. So ultimately, finding that person is important. It doesn't really matter how you do it, and don't expect a company to provide that person for you, and don't expect, the sales reps and your peers around you to help you, because they don't have to. And in sales, if you haven't learned, like, not everyone's going to pull you up that's next to you, because, you compete against them too.
Right. No, it's very true. Yeah, that's very true. And it actually leads us to my next question for you. So, and I've talked about this recently with a few different guests, but I want to talk about you because you've had this role and you've been in this industry for as long as you've been in it. Back 15, 20 years ago, there's this whole thing of, 5 years from now, reps are gone. You're not going to need them. Technology is advancing so fast. The rep life, it's a fading thing. And then 5 years later, the same conversation, and 5 years later. And if you look at the industry, it's actually growing. The number of sales reps in the field is growing in med device, in pharmaceutical, in dental. I mean, you name it. So talk to me a little bit about what's your take on what it's really going to look like for the rep of the future, 10 years out.
I think every company is going to look a little different, right? So they're going to be in orthopedics, for example, they're heavy into new tech, right? So that's robotics, that's AI, augmented reality. So, I think that's rapidly going to change, but what companies are doing is they're hiring more people right now, like you stated, to get it in front of them. And I think it's going to be this huge vacuum that comes back. And so ultimately what I see the big players doing is hire people, and they don't want super reps, right? So they're trying to de-risk, their business by, taking groups of people and hiring, we're breaking up the business, right? So if a rep leaves, they're less likely to lose that portion of business, and they're creating pods and teams. And so I think it's brand awareness, like you said, and ultimately these companies are leading themselves toward more reps, not less. I thought for sure, I even tried to get a patent honestly on a company for a repless model. And I think that will, like, as RFID and certain things and logistics become, the hospitals do not want reps. That's for sure. I mean, there are so many, But when you're providing, when I say providing value in OR, we talked a little bit about that. I think it's one or two times when, you're putting now the responsibility on who to do our job, right? So is it on a hospital employee, right? And so then how do they sign off on that? And so when the big risk that these companies take is that they do say, hey, when you use our knee or hip or shoulder, like we're going to guarantee that you're going to have everything that we offer for the surgery, right? And so having that available, I think, is very important. And people, providing that to the surgeon and service is important. And the further we get away from service, right? Companies are doing that, right? They're going away from the sales rep. They're going towards more marketing, and it's marketing heavy, especially with social and what we're talking about. But if you just go straight marketing, straight direct to consumer, and try to cut out the sales rep, which is the most expensive part for a company, right? Paying a sales rep is, if they could get rid of them, they would, right? That's where their revenue is going. It's funny. I interviewed with Google a while back, and it was for a position called Google Offers. And I tell this story because I had an offer from Google and I had an offer from Stryker, and I didn't go to Google, right? I was in San Francisco, and at the time, I wanted to stay out there, and I had these two massive, and I was in med device, but I'm like, Google's like the second greatest company in the world. Right. Who doesn't go to Google, right? But I had this Stryker job, and it was my dream job too, and it was right in my hometown. And I took the Stryker job, and I didn't take the Google job. And I'm glad I didn't, because if you ever heard of Google Offers, right? So what Google tried to do is they tried to buy Groupon for $6 billion. And Groupon said, we're worth 25, 30 billion. We're not going to take it. So Google's like, all right, well, we have this search engine. We're going to just, we know what people are looking for. We'll just have this thing called Google Offers. And when people look for, a medical device product, sales for medical device, they'll see Evolve Your Success pop up, right? And then there'll be a little offer where we work with Evolve Your Success. Well, they hired a sales force, right? And 7 months later, they got rid of the entire sales force, thinking, this will be smart. We won't have to pay sales reps. We have the second biggest behind, Mickey Mouse, the second biggest brand awareness logo in the world. We know what our customers are looking for, right? Because we have a search engine. They were the most prepared out of any company to succeed without sales reps. But if you Google Offers right now, you'll see that at 7 months, they got rid of all their sales reps. And at 9 months, they did away with the entire program because it failed. Because they thought by replacing the sales rep by a simple 3-page paper that people could pay out, and fill out and go, hey, and then they could come to them. They never came, right? So even though you're the biggest brand in the world, I think, if one of the big three went tomorrow and said, we're not going to have sales reps, I think that company would die. Joe,
I'm stealing that story too. I'm just going to put that out there right now.
Well, it's yours. It's your podcast.
That is a fantastic story. That is good. So basically you're saying the sales rep's never going to die, but there's going to be a lot of shifts and changes in what that says.
Yeah, I think if you're not the most talented rep in the room, you're eventually, it's going to either lead towards you're running a robot, right? And you're trained to run that robot. And so, there are companies that are starting to do that. And what they're going to do is they're branching off, right? So I think trauma is going to be a trauma, recon is going to be recon, Mako, or Corey, or, GPS, or there's a million different companies that are offering a lot of different robotic programs, and they're all great, right? I think they're going to put more education towards those reps, which is good for the industry. And I'm hoping more education towards the surgeons, right? So that, the level of care comes up. I think the problem for them is they're coming out with so many new products that they have to have people to utilize, to run them. So eventually they'll taper that back, and they're going to try and do away. Who knows? I can't predict it. I'm not going to tell the future, but we could all guess at it, but we're probably all going to be wrong. It's like trying to win the lottery, right?
It's worth.
So that's why I don't think that way. Like
it's
honestly,
worth the discussion.
I put blinders on, and I tell my team to put blinders on, and I'm like, hey, these are your 4 targets. You know your job every day. You get up, you do it the same way every time. And it's literally bringing a vibe to the OR. If you're going to come in the room, you're going to add value. if you don't add value, right? There's a lot of reps that just walk into a OR room every day. I see it, and it's just like they stand there and they're like, this is my product and whatever. I will not walk into a room unless I have a purpose to be in that room. Period. And if you don't feel you're adding value to the room, now that's in a million different ways, right? And you could almost laugh if you were a fly on the wall, right? Because every single surgeon wants their room to be run a different way. That service we're providing, right? The service is what we're selling. And I think that's what's winning in orthopedics. And so like I encourage companies to have more sales reps, but train them right with the right mentors. And so, maybe that looks like companies coming to guys like me and partnering with maybe, guys like yourself and going, look, how do we provide a better education for these people? Because maybe they're all not getting what they need. Maybe we need to go to the rep and go, hey, what can we do besides just train you on our product, right? What else could you need? Like maybe they should have more of a mentor program. I'm not sure of one existing, right? So I think social media and having the ability to scale it, online with online classes and virtual reality classes and be able to teach with surgeons and peer-to-peer stuff, all that's going to change. So I think that's going to change in the next 2 years. I will say that. And because I've had conversations with high ups of, I guess I can't talk too much towards it, but the future of education is upon us. And so I think that's where we're at. And you've discovered that, and maybe you can talk a little bit towards that. You told me during COVID, you exploded. And so why is that? Why do you think?
You nailed it, right? During COVID, things were just shut down, so much so that people saw that it has to be virtual. Everything that we do, from the way we sell to the way we reach people to the way we help people, has to be virtual. We knew that going before COVID. We didn't know that COVID would make this catalyst of let's fast forward things 3 to 4 or 5 years ahead of time. But we knew that, okay, at some point, it's just going to make more sense to do things virtually than trying to come up with these in-person ways of doing things, of just doing any kind of business. So we took advantage of that by saying, let's make sure all the services we provide and just and not even just services, from this podcast to any interaction, let's make sure it's easily accessible virtually. Then COVID hit. And so when you're already designed to go that direction and make things work that way, and then everybody jumps on a platform to work that way, it's inevitable that you're gonna expand significantly, which is what happened with us. And it also happened with, other sales reps that were doing, they were online, they were kind of preaching a little bit. I think during COVID, things really exploded for them as well. One thing I like to laugh at is when we started our podcast, it was 2020, and there were maybe 6 or 7 medical sales podcasts. And we were one of them. And now, maybe 36, 37. And that literally happened during COVID. And why did that happen? Because people realized, I can do so much more, and I can help so many more, and I can offer whatever value I have to bring, I can offer it to so many more people right here. And that's the direction it's going to continue to go in. Like you said, we'll see if there's more reps or less reps. We will see. Because I laugh. I remember when I first started 2005, and, the 30, 40-year-old, 40 years in, reps were saying, man, reps are going to be gone in 5 years. Reps are going to be gone in 10 years. And here we are today. And like we said, it's growing. So I think reps are always going to be, there's always going to be value. I think the rep is always going to bring value no matter what. Even in these spaces, even if things go more AI, like you said, with robotics, as the tech continues to grow, you're still going to need a rep to bring it in to an account and get them using everything that the company has to offer to be used. I think since COVID, people now realize that virtual is only going to grow. We have to continue to go virtual. This COVID can happen again. Things can get crazy again. We want to be in front of it this time. So, we're living the future, Joe.
Right. And it's one day at a time, right? So that's perfect for me, right? Because I'm a visionary in the sense of like what I want to build and thinking down the road. But the future for an orthopedic sales rep is one day at a time, man. And so I try not to think about that too hard, right? Because if all the sales reps are gone, in my opinion, they all have to be gone, or I'm not going to have a job, right? So if there's one left, I want to fight for that position because that's all I know right now, right? So at least I'm going to put my name in the hat, and we'll see. I might get knocked out.
I get it. I get it. So let me ask you this, Joe. We've gotten to hear just how much has gone into the rep you are today, and it's a beautiful story because I think anyone's going to learn that, wow, Joe has experienced a lot to be the person he is today. Tell us a little bit about the personal side of Joe. I mean, how do you make all this work? You mentioned earlier you were talking about kids and games, and so let you tell it. You would think a single person is the only person that can do this job, but that's not your case. So tell us the other side of Joe.
I have a lot of passions, right? So I have a lot of hobbies. Huge in fishing. A little boy who's 7, Grayson, who this summer caught his biggest snook. He caught a 45-inch snook, and that for me is what I live for, right? I mean, for me, that's it, right? I have a little girl who's 4, Zoe, who we're trying to get her to get on a soccer field, right? She's eating Scooby snacks. So, I'm Mr. Total competitiveness. And then you have to have a different side when you have a little blonde-headed, curly hair, blue-eyed little girl that's like, Daddy, I want to sit and watch and eat Scooby snacks on your lap instead of going and playing soccer, And I'm like, no. Like, worst case scenario, you need to sit with your team, right? Like, you can't sit on my lap on the sidelines, but
That's
what are you
great.
going to do? Joe Testa likes to try and live for his kids right now. And for me, that means trying to create time for them. And so that's become a challenge with me and my team. And organically, indirectly, that's a huge reason as to why I made a change away from a different company, tried to do something and scale in a different way. So ultimately, ExactTech's given me a lot of freedom to try and to scale my team to the capacity to where we're running, and they have time for their family, and I have time for my family. And as we grow, we add guys to the way in which our team needs it. And time's important too, because you can't just run at 100 hours a week for a decade. I've done that, and it will bury you all. At the end of the day, you just can't do it forever. And so ultimately it becomes less about like sales and money and this and that. And it becomes more about how do I create more time for myself? And so that's the type of question I would ask the companies, if I were hired, getting hired by them is like, look, like one thing that has changed through COVID is, people don't want to go into work, right? So, jobs have become easier. This job hasn't, right? Through COVID, we went in with no protection, no PPP, right? There was like traumas there. We don't know what COVID is, but this patient broke themselves and you have to fix them. So here you go. So that was a scary time, right? So for me, I try to play golf and I watch my little boy play baseball, and I try to spend as much time as possible outside of orthopedics as I can. But then at the end of the day, when I get up in the morning at 5:15, man, it doesn't, and there's a surgery to be there, someone has to be there. So, my family sacrifices, quite a bit, to be successful for them. They're the really unsung heroes, not me. Because they're at times a guy looking like, where's daddy? Be real with you. It's hard. And I try to think, well, does that make sense as a father to do that? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Because I'm doing what's best for my family. And I think in the end, they'll see. It's funny because the reason I write, honestly, I got up one day and I wrote on the internet, right? And LinkedIn posted it. And then I decided, well, what am I really doing? And honestly, and I think I shared this with you, last week, is that my goal for everything I write on the internet is to document content for my kids. So if I were to die tomorrow, right? And that's a dark picture, right? But when you do 10,000 surgeries over the last 10 years, you start to realize that, your life could change if you get in a car accident tomorrow, or, you step off a ladder the wrong way tomorrow, or, when you get hurt, your life changes. And so I try to live for today, and that means not a whole lot of sleep and a lot of, living vicariously through my kids. My little boy hit 2 home runs over the last 2 weeks. So that's it for me as a coach.
Joe, I got to say, that's a profound statement. As a content creator myself, I've thought about it. I've thought about, I want to make sure whatever I'm saying here makes sense, because one day my kids will be able to look at it and who knows.
Yeah.
But I've never thought about the way you just said it, where this is my, for lack of a better word, documentary.
This is my testimony. The word is testimony.
Even better. This is my testimony for my kids. That's profound. I think you just got yourself like 50,000 more followers from anybody that hears you saying that. That alone makes me want to make sure I'm seeing every post you put up every single day. But really, that's profound. That's great to say. And I think that's something we can all, any content creator listening can really take that home. I love that. So, Joe, this has been fantastic. Why don't you tell us, leave us with one thing. Again, people that are listening want to get into the industry. People that are listening are in the industry, and people that are listening are leading the way. What's one message you want to leave with the audience before I take you through the lightning rounds? Give me one message you want to leave with the audience.
I think it's attitude is everything, right? So for me, that was something my dad told me. And I talk about, being a coach for my little kid. And I actually told that to one of the kids this morning, right? The kid had a poor attitude and he didn't, he was trying to catch. And I'm trying to put the catcher's gear on him. And he just would not put a smile on his face. As a rep, what I really, at the end of the day, if you can do nothing else right? Make sure your instruments are there, make sure your implants are there, make sure you have a positive attitude, right? Because if you're positive, you're going to make people around you positive. And if you're negative, that negative vibe breeds, right? Like it's wildfire. So my personal goal, like at the end of the day, no matter what, right? Like you're in sales, right? You can't have a bad day. So especially in an OR, right? When you're setting the tone and it's about the patient and the surgeon. So for me, it's attitude is everything. So when you step between the lines and, you call the timeout, you go in, you do your job, or you get up in the morning, you're like, I just do not want to do this. My body hurts. I've been doing this 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, 10 days in a row. You go, attitude is everything. And it's a 1-sentence statement that goes, that's it. You set your mind, you reset. That's what it is.
Got it. All right. I love it. Attitude is everything. That's going in the show notes. So yes. Okay, Joe, we're going to have a little bit of fun before we end it today. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I'm going to give you no time to think about it. So you got to give me your answer in 10 seconds or less. You ready? Are you ready?
I think so.
First question. Best book you read in the last 6 months?
Outliers.
Outliers.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's a good book. I love it. Is that a reread or a new read for you?
I've read parts of this. So, I had a dear friend from Exact Tech send this to me, and we were talking about it on the phone, and she thought that it would be something that, I said I had read it, but, I wanted to read it again for something my son was going through. And so she was kind enough to send that.
Hey, it's a good one, man. And really, it supports everything you've shared today. It really does. So that's a great book. All right. Best show or movie you've seen the last 6 months?
I would say Top Gun, but that's like what everybody's saying on there. So I'm going to say Top Gun.
I still haven't seen it. I know.
It was epic.
Everybody's saying that. My kids have seen it, and they're telling me it's epic. So I need to get on it.
So one of my surgeons kind of put that in perspective to me, because there was this whole thing during COVID, and Tom was yelling at someone that wasn't wearing a mask, that was on the thing. And I said that to one of my surgeons, Charlton Stukin, and I'm like, dude, I don't understand why he went nuts on this guy. And he goes, what do you mean you don't understand? He's like, Tom Cruise is trying to create the greatest film that's ever been made. And it's during COVID. And if one guy's not wearing a mask, he can't fly in a fighter jet.
It makes sense.
What do you mean you don't understand? Like, you get goosebumps seeing it. And honest to God, I cried during that movie. I mean,
don't tell me anything. Okay, stop.
Out, man.
I will watch it. Do not give me any.
What is wrong with you? How many people have to tell you that same movie?
I know. Everybody I meet is.
So let me ask you a question. What's your favorite movie that you've seen in the last 6 months?
My favorite movie that I've seen in the last 6 months. I got to be honest. I'm not, lately, I haven't been the most of the movie guy.
Yeah.
I'd have to say it's a TV show. And the best TV show I'd say in the last 6 months, believe it or not, was my kids got me onto it. And that was Stranger Things.
All right. I haven't seen it.
It was shockingly good. I was surprised. When your kids say, "Dad, you got to watch this," you're like, yeah. But I was actually pleasantly surprised. It was good. All right. Last question, or last two questions. Best meal you've had in the last 6 months?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm surprised you didn't lay out something you cooked or the wife cooked, but that's okay.
I don't cook, man. I don't.
Right.
It's the the best. Let me think about it. Last night. I can speak towards last night, right? Last night I had these biscuits that were good, and they had the cinnamon like butter that you could put on it. I'm a huge sweets guy, so for me it's all about dessert. So it was like this, like biscuits and cinnamon butter. I don't know.
Oh, that just sounds delicious. I'm big on my sweet tooth is ridiculous. And then the last question: best experience you've had in the last 6 months?
I just got back fly fishing from Vail, and that for me is a guy, Chris Wu, that's up there, and him and I have been fishing the last 4 years. Was awesome. I mean, I get to turn the phone off for one day, and it is, it was the best day. It was super peaceful. We're on the Roaring Fork, and we went down the river, and you don't have a care in the world, right? There's not ambulances going to the hospital. There's not hip fractures that you're having to plan for. There's not a million phone calls. You don't have your kids tagging, yelling at you. Just go down the river without a phone and the fly fish, and it doesn't suck that we caught 50 plus fish. So him and I, that for me, it's hard to beat.
That's fantastic, man. Joe, loved having you on the show today. We're going to be continuing to follow you on LinkedIn.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm going to, I guess, continue to ramble on LinkedIn. I'm not stop there.
Absolutely. And keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing amazing things out there.
Appreciate it.
And that was Joe Testa. So much to draw from in that episode. If you're someone that's interested in orthopedic device sales, you have a clear picture of what you're getting yourself into and what's going to be expected of you. A wonderful episode. And I'm so glad he spent the time to share with us. So, you might be listening to this and you might be thinking, that's exactly what I want to do. Or you might be listening to this and saying to yourself, I know I don't want to do that. Whatever question or statement that has come to your mind after listening to today's episode, one thing is still clear. You want to be in medical sales. Maybe you don't know which medical sales is right for you. Maybe you just don't even know which type of medical sales exist. Maybe you've listened to this podcast for a little while, you've gotten a glimpse, but you're still unclear. Well, listen, if you want to get into the medical sales industry and you want to find the field that's for you and truly get a position in a reasonable amount of time, then you need to visit evolveyoursuccess.com, select Attain Medical Sales Role, submit an application, and have a conversation with someone from the team, and let's help you get into the role you deserve. Half of the journey of medical sales or getting a medical sales position is truly understanding what's available and truly understanding what's right for you. And that's something that we champion and we do very well here at Evolve Your Success. So don't wait, don't think, don't wonder, don't wish. Just go to evolveyoursuccess.com, select Attain Medical Sales Role, fill out the application, and have a conversation and learn where you're supposed to be and learn a fantastic and fast way to get there. As always, we do our best to bring you innovative guests. So make sure you tune in next week for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive-level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.